Native Americans and white people were best friends. Well, gosh gee, I'm glad everything worked out. Pocahontas, released in 1995 and is directed by Mike Gabriel and Eric Goldberg, who are also behind such films like The Rescuers, Fantasia 2000, The Princess and the Frog, and Moana. And it's a Disney movie, so it does have the music of Alan Menken and is starring the voice cast of Irene Bedard, Mel Gibson, David Steers, John Kasser, Russell Means, Billy Connolly, and Christian Bale. Many years before Batman and just after when he was in Newsies. God, Christian Bale can do no wrong and has done everything. In the early 1600s, settlers from Great Britain braved the savage seas of the Atlantic Ocean to settle themselves in the New World. However, this New World is already inhabited by the Native Americans, who are living a peaceful life in solitude. But one Native American is having dreams and ambitions of something big and greater that is on the horizon, and her name is Pocahontas. And those dreams come true when she meets one of the English settlers, John Smith, voiced by Mel Gibson, and though hesitant at each other at first, start to develop a loving relationship of understanding. However, the settlers grow uneasy with the Native Americans surrounding them, and with them not finding any gold in the grounds, so they decide to take up arms against the Native Americans to make them tell them where the gold is hidden. And they start raising their guns, and the Native Americans start raising their bow and arrows, and everyone's about to fight until something happens to make them not want to fight, and then they all hug and shake hands, and everything is goody-goody two-shoes, and everything is okay in history to come. White people learned to live in harmony with Native Americans, and Native Americans were not repressed and moved off the land at all. Or at least, according to this movie, that is what Disney would want you to believe. God. I'm gonna be honest, this is probably going to be the hardest movie review that I've ever done, because I am so conflicted on this frickin' thing. Because the historical inaccuracies of this movie is daunting. It is shocking how just, hey, let's put a blanket over it and let's just ignore all of the bad things and let's talk about the kinda good things that may or may not have happened. But the other side of me is I was a kid in the 90s, and when it was a Disney film, I was automatically there and I loved it. And I loved watching this movie. I collected all of the action figures. We had the cassette tape of Pocahontas. Yeah, that's right. I said cassette tape. That's how old I am. And I believe we were moving a lot at the time. So when we were moving across states, we had this cassette tape and Mom played it just for me because it was the only thing that kept me entertained. So I know these songs like the frickin' back of my hand. Historically inaccurate. But it's great nostalgia for me personally. Let's just address the historical inaccuracies at the start here so I can get into the movie and maybe salvage this thing. This movie is historically inaccurate, which is nothing new when it comes to film adaptations. Every film adaptation of some type of historical event or historic people has always been inaccurate in some way, shape, or form. But I think it's a little different with this movie because they paint it in such a happy-go-lucky, let's all put a smile on our faces, happy ending to a situation that is just so racist and wrong, and it's very uncomfortable to talk about, really. But let's just say what it was. My people, the white people, came to this country and moved the Native Americans off the land and took over. The Native Americans showed sympathy and helped a couple of them along the way, and by repaying them, were like, hey, thanks! Now move over there, thank you very much. That is what happened. There is no changing it, and it is disgusting how Disney was like, hey, here's all the happy things that happened back then, and all of the joy and happiness. And really, that's what my teachers taught. They taught all of the good things that happened back then. The Pilgrims coming over to America, and the Native Americans sharing their food with them so they wouldn't die during the cold season. That's why we have Thanksgiving, and that's why Thanksgiving is the greatest holiday on the planet. White people took advantage of Native Americans. Period. Moving on. Now that part aside, not ignoring it, just that part aside here, talking about the movie itself, the message behind the intentions of this movie is great and is a great thing for young kids to see. Just because someone is different than you, looks different than you, have different practices than you, believe in different things than you believe, does not make them worse than you and does not make them evil. It just makes them different, and we should all embrace each other's differences because it's a very natural natural thing for human beings to look at everyone and say, like, oh, well, your skin color is different from mine. I don't like you. Or you worship a different god than I do. You're worse and I'm better than you. Human beings do that constantly and are still doing it constantly. And that's why the music of this film, the lyrics of these songs, live on in infamy. These songs attach themselves to me and I have not forgotten them. Just going back, this is the first time I've watched this movie in a good 20-25 years, and I remember everything because the lyrics meant so much to me as a kid. You can own the earth and still all you'll own is earth until you can paint with the colors of the wind. That is a beautiful line. If you write this film off because of its treatment of Native Americans and its historical inaccuracies, you at least have to acknowledge the amazing music of this film. Alan Menken, he's a Disney song genius. He does such great work when it comes to Disney music, and the lyrics that he has here, the songs are all just great. All except this one song that was in the special edition version of Pocahontas. I've never seen it before. It wasn't released in theatrical version, but it's a song called If I Never Knew You, and it's sung by Mel Gibson when he's in his tent the morning before he is sent off to be killed. That song was just weird. The placement is weird. It's a nice song on its own. It's a beautiful song between two people sharing their love for each other. But then you look at the situation and you're like, dude, you're about to die. And you're singing like this love ballad, this happy-go-lucky love ballad. Nothing sad or scary in there. And it just felt like, well, the pacing of this movie just totally halted and we just flip-flopped what we were doing here. Strange. Very glad they took it out in the theatrical version. And if you ever wanted to know what the Aryan race looked like, you just look at John Smith from this movie. He has that mid-cut blonde hair, blue eyes, and is always standing on top of a log or a cliff or something, just out over the horizon, looking very heroic, as if he owns the land that he landed on. And then there's Pocahontas, who I really do love as a character in this movie. Again, not historically accurate at all, but in this movie, I do love her. She's unsettled, she doesn't want to be at this status quo, a great call to adventure, and she's instructing these new people coming into her land about how the land works and how you need to kind of look around you because there is beauty around you and you are not seeing it. You're just focused on finding these little tiny nuggets of gold in the ground that, I'm sorry, just aren't there. And also too, as a young kid, I thought she was very attractive, and that statement still is true today. And because it's Disney, you have great animal characters in here with Miko and Percy and Flick, the dog, the raccoon, the hummingbird. Love all of them. And we have a very surface level one-trick pony in the villain, Governor Radcliffe, voiced by David Steers, who I remember as Mr. Bauer from Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place. Love that man so much. I believe he passed away a couple of years ago. But he's the epitome of just evil arrogance in this movie. And there's not any depth to him at all. It's just gold. I want gold. Mine it for me. We can't find any gold? Well, the Indians must have it. Oh yeah, that was the other thing. It was the 90s, and back in the 90s, it was still pretty common to call Native Americans Indians back then, even though the name is completely offensive and has nothing to do with either cultures at all. But then the settlers and the Native Americans, they stop fighting because the chief is like, ooh, peace, my daughter loves John Smith, so we're all gonna stop fighting. So the settlers are like, well, they don't want to fight, so everything's okay then. And again, like, yeah, sure, that's exactly what white people did back then. Oh, they don't want to fight? Okay, I don't want to fight either. When has that ever been a thing that white people have wanted to do? Oh, you don't want to fight? Really, white people? You don't? Sorry, I keep going back to the historical inaccuracies here because it's so hard to get away from. Like I said, this is the hardest review I have ever done because I have such nostalgia for this movie, but there's also so much controversy, especially nowadays, now that people have progressed a little bit more from the 90s, I think. But this movie's like, nah, no, that didn't happen. Everything was fine. If you can put aside the historical inaccuracies, I think this movie has a great message about understanding and empathy and walking a mile in someone else's shoes before you judge them and getting to know people from different societies and cultures, how important that is. great message. But I totally understand if you look at the poster of this movie or you watch this movie and you go, wow, that extremely offended me because this is not what happened at all, and you're putting nice little rosy hearts over a situation that is very, very serious and very sad and is still happening today. I definitely see you writing this movie off. There's a big tug of war here, but in the end, I'm going to give Pocahontas 3 out of 5 Blu-rays.
Not exactly what I had in mind, but not bad.
Alright everyone, now comes my favorite part of my video is where I pick which movie I'm going to be watching next, and next Friday a big movie comes out about a very big character that is important to my life, a character called Batman. It's a movie called The Batman. So in honor of The Batman, I am going to be releasing my ranking of all of the theatrically released Batman films next Friday, but leading up to it, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about Batman. So next week I'm going to be looking at a couple of animated features of Batman, since they're not going to be included on my ranking list. Animated features that I haven't watched in a while, and the first one that I wanted to check out again was a movie called Batman Under the Red Hood. We're talking about the death and resurrection of Jason Todd after he was brutally murdered by the Joker, and I remember just loving that animated feature, but I haven't gone back to watch it a lot. So we'll check it out next time. So guys, if you've seen Pocahontas, what did you think about it? I'm actually very interested in to hear what everyone thinks about this movie. Whether you love it, whether you hate it, whether you don't even give it the time of day due to the subject matter that it has and with the name of Disney over it. Whatever you thought, please comment below. Let me know what you thought about it. And as always, if you like what you see here, if you like my take on movies, then hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that bell. See you on the next time I release my next movie review. So guys, I will see you next time with my review of Batman Under the Red Hood. So in the meantime, be well, be good to each other, and go watch a movie. Take care, guys.